Ethereal, beautiful, sometimes silent entities who guide us. Other times, unforgiving warriors who test the player's resilience. The women crafted in FromSoftware's games carry traits that set them apart from how the rest of the video game industry currently portrays female characters. In today's video, I want to share my perspective on how the representation of women in FromSoftware's universe differs from the path taken by so many other games companies. So, let's begin a journey through games and culture. I've been thinking about this topic a lot lately, so I decided to write an opinion text and turn it into a script for my channel. Just a reminder, this video reflects the opinion of a woman, gamer, who has been playing since 1996 and has witnessed how the portrayal of female characters in video game industry has changed over the years. Today, there's a growing trend toward more realistic and diverse depictions. Female characters with agency, complexity, and different body types. And that's valid. But on the other hand, sensual female characters, or those with more reserved personalities, are often criticized, or even have their presence diminished. In this context, the female characters in FromSoftware's games present an interesting contrast. FromSoftware, a Japanese developer, portrays women, both in physical form and personality, in ways that often differ from current norms. And now a little history and cultural analysis. For years, female characters were seen only as sensual women created for the male gaze. Exaggerated curves, revealing outfits, impractical clothing. Think Lara Croft, Jill Valentine, Bayonetta, Chun-Li, Camille, Miranda Lawson from Mass Effect, Morrigan from Dragon Age, the list goes on. What's curious is that these very characters, supposedly designed to please a male audience, ended up being embraced by women and the LGBTQ community. Take Lara Croft and Bayonetta, for example, and I think it's obvious why that happened. They're charismatic, powerful, and they don't need to constantly remind you that they are independent. Their actions show it. Yes, these characters are undeniably sensual and sure, they are far from realistic. It's not exactly practical to fight zombies in a miniskirt or explore the jungle in shorts, but to me, that was never a problem. Determined yet feminine characters, strong-willed yet beautiful women, these portrayals were never a problem in the games mentioned, and yet they are still treated as an outdated standard that reinforces stereotypes. Why? Games are art. They're entertainment. They don't need to be a mirror of real life. They're an escape. I don't play to see an extension of my world. I play to pretend I'm a warrior, a Tomb Raider, a spaceship commander. And of course, we tend to be more interested when characters are visually appealing. But why? According to aesthetics, also known as the theory of beauty, there's an explanation. Aesthetics is a branch of philosophy and arts that explores the human attraction to beauty. Not just beauty crafted by humans, like Greek statues or Renaissance paintings, but also the beauty found in nature. We are drawn to the sublime and the beautiful, just as we are fascinated by the grotesque. Of course, art isn't just about beauty, it's about sensibility, a perception that also connects to the aesthetic sense of a work. Video games are a human artistic creation, and as such, they tap into that same idea. They must transmit emotion. They must also touch in the concept of beauty. And this isn't limited to women. The way men are portrayed in games also reflects this. Kratos, Nathan Drake, Dante, Arthur Morgan, Leon Kennedy, Geralt, they all embody traits carefully crafted with the aesthetic theory in mind. Humans like to admire beauty. Another important point. When we play games, we don't necessarily want something identical to our real lives. Games function like movies and books when it comes to escapism. We play to pretend, even if it's just for a few hours, that we are living in those universes. So, video games are a form of artistic expression meant to stir emotions, pleasure, anger, joy, what we can call catharsis. Of course, even if a game isn't real, it needs some degree of proximity to reality. It needs to imitate the world enough to create what we call the willing suspension of disbelief. This connected with Aristotle's concept of mimesis, the idea of art as imitation. When Aristotle analyzes tragedies and epic poetry in Poetics, he concludes that humans, being artistic by nature, are inclined to imitation. We want to replicate that which gives us pleasure. For Aristotle, writers must construct narratives that feel plausible, even if they include fantasy, exaggeration, or the supernatural. Just like Greek epics, filled with cyclopes, sea monsters, sirens, and sorcerers, as we can see in the Odyssey. The definition of art as imitation has been debated for centuries, but I personally like to see art with these two concepts in mind. First, as something that generates a reaction in its audience, and second, as a narrative rooted in reality in order to hold our attention. Antoine Compagnon, in the book On the Demon of Theory, defends the same idea, that we should merge the Aristotelian tradition with modern views. After all, mimesis wasn't just copying reality, it was the construction of a narrative capable of captivating the audience, leading to catharsis. That's why game narratives can be fantastical, surreal, even absurd, because their ultimate goal is to provoke a reaction, as all art should. That's also why characters can be so unrealistic, perform inhuman feats, have perfect bodies, or wear impractical outfits. Because these games aren't meant to mimic real life, they are meant to transform our reality. They are about producing catharsis through escapism. So, do I disagree with the way female characters are being developed in recent years? No. I actually admire the better representation of LGBTQ characters. Dorian from Dragon Age Inquisition, for example, was exceptionally well written. Culture goes through transformations, and the video game industry, as part of society's culture, must undergo these changes as well. My issue lies in the generalization of treating the central female character as something outdated. Dividing games with female characters into humanized, more realistic women versus objectify women is such a narrow viewpoint that it fails to acknowledge even the opinions of many women gamers who often don't actually care about what's labeled as sexualization. Personally, I much prefer 90s Lara Croft to her modern version. I don't mind Eve's design in Stellar Blade, and Miranda Lawson's outfit in Mass Effect doesn't bother me at all. And the question I ask is, are these characters really a problem? And now, after all this, how do FromSoftware's characters fit into this discussion? How does the Japanese developer portray its women? Dark Souls trilogy, Bloodborne, Elden Ring, they all have a very distinctive narrative style and a unique tone, with clear influences from Western literature, especially fantasy, cosmic horror, and gothic fiction. In the case of Elden Ring, the influence of Tolkien's fantasy and medieval history is even more apparent. I talk a bit about that in my video on Elden Ring and Tolkien. If the story in these games is rich, what can we say about their characters? We know many are mysterious, traumatized, and carry tragic narratives. And what about the women? They can be ethereal, delicate, sensual, fearless warriors, wise, manipulators, victims. A variety of archetypes already found in literature, which the developers have successfully brought into the world of gaming. But what do they all have in common? They all seem to defy the current expectations set by the modern gaming industry. One common archetype in From games is the quiet maiden, or guide figure. In Demon's Souls, Bloodborne, and Elden Ring, for example, the player is often aided by a calm, soft-spoken female NPC who helps us level up or provides narrative guidance. These characters are typically young women, quiet and demure. They are there to serve our protagonist, our hero, our hunter. They are kind and try to explain what's happening. Still, Melina is more than that. She sacrificed herself so the tarnish can reach his or her goal, but in another ending, if the player embraces the frenzied flame, she swears revenge and appears threatening, with no hint of passivity. Other female characters in Elden Ring also show strong motivations and fight for their goals. Honey, who manipulates many of her allies. Malenia, with incredible self-control, able to contain the Scarlet Rot while trying to save her brother. Tanith, who rules beside and later replaces her husband, Rykard. And I won't even get started on Marika. I made an entire video about her, comparing her to another powerful female figure from literature, Cersei Lannister. Nefeli Lu is a strong, fearless warrior who, on top of everything, becomes Lord of Lingrave. Millicent, who shows great resilience and fights not to become a monster, and Fia, who is depicted as a tainted woman, a deathbed companion, who sleeps beside the dead in order to honor Godwyn and his legacy. The fact is, it seems easier to criticize these characters than to truly examine how their narratives are constructed. Many will argue that it wasn't necessary for Malenia to appear naked in her second phase. But again, this discussion touches on aesthetics and FromSoftware's ability to combine two seemingly contradictory elements. The decay that consumes the goddess body, representing everything vile and rot, with beauty. And this vision evokes both repulsion and fascination in the player, which is, after all, the goal of art. Of course, there are characters without much motivation, whose role is to serve. That's the case of the plain doll, but again, FromSoftware challenges the player. The doll is a fragile, passive representation of a powerful and beautiful woman with clear motivations. Lady Maria. By creating the plain doll, German tries to recreate a submissive woman, the opposite of the hunter he was obsessed with, but who was forever out of his reach. There are also female characters who can be seen as simply sexualized, like Guinevere from Dark Souls, and the Desert Sorceress, enemies found in Dark Souls 2. But even so, I wonder what's the real issue with how these women were conceived, especially if we consider that From's male characters can be created with the same goal, to appeal to the player's gaze. Just think of Radagon, Radan, and Horalu, strong, warrior-like, with attractive bodies. All of this design serves the same purpose. They were made because we enjoy looking at beautiful things. We appreciate beauty. And there's nothing wrong with that. Games are, as I said before, a form of artistic escape. Art made of polygons, meant to entertain and stir emotions in us, players. Perhaps the FromSoftware title with the largest number of female characters, and the one that most deeply explored feminine themes, is Bloodborne. Bloodborne is a tale of Gothic and Lovecraftian horror that masterfully explores themes like birth, blood, and the loss of control over the female body. A perfect example is Ariana, the gentle prostitute who, if certain conditions are met, ends up impregnated by an eldritch creature and gives birth to a horrific alien infant. The imposter Zefka is a female doctor who's in clinic, conceals dark experiments on patients, and who ultimately also decides to offer her body to an ancient cosmic entity. There's also Queen Yarna, a tragic figure seen weeping over the loss of her child, a mother who unwillingly bore an unwanted creature. We have Eileen the Crow, a charismatic woman who is a hunter like the player, but specializes in hunting down other hunters who have gone mad. Annalise, the powerful and seductive Queen of Kinghurst, inspired by Lady Bathory and the vampire Carmilla. And finally, Lady Maria, a hunter with a strong personality, deeply traumatized by her past choices. Many of these women are not presented in a sexualized way and not only have clear motivations, but are also essential to the game's narrative development. To me, It's clear that the portrayal of women in FromSoftware games is very different from the rest of the video game industry, perhaps due to the fact that the studio is Japanese, especially considering that other Eastern developers have also delivered female characters who stray from current market trends, such as Lies of P and the already controversial Stellar Blade, which drew criticism for featuring Eve, a sexy woman with a body supposedly designed only to appeal to men. Anyway, as a woman and a gamer, I never had a problem with how female bodies are designed in games, whether it's Lara Croft, Chun-Li, Jill Valentine, or Malenia. I believe representation in the industry matters, but canceling or criticizing games just because they feature sexy characters is a sad and limited way of thinking. After all, there's nothing wrong with beauty or with the power of games to transport us to realities so different from our own. Although this video isn't strictly about lore, discussing culture and literature in relation to games is something I really enjoy, so I hope you all liked the video. And if you enjoyed this kind of content, don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel. Thanks for watching. Until next time, bye!